Before we get going on today's podcast, a special thanks to Catapult Sports for bringing us out to AFCA to sit down and do podcasts in their booth. That was a great opportunity for us. We were able to connect with a lot of our listeners as well, so thank you for stopping by. You probably see Catapult Sports as something for the big programs, and they do have all but 3 of the Power 5 teams as clients, as well as 19 NFL teams. So that is true, but they've developed a product for high school and small college as well. And if you want to get an edge with what you're doing, you definitely want to check that out at one.catapultsports.com. Today's podcast is with Darrin Chiaverini. Coach Chiaverini is an offensive analyst for UCLA and wide receivers coach. And after a stint in the NFL, being drafted by the Cleveland Browns in 1999, he began his coaching career at Mount San Antonio College, a junior college. From there, he went to UCLA as a special teams assistant, back to the junior college level at River City College. He was with Texas Tech in 2014 and 15, and then Colorado 2016 through 21. Now is an offensive analyst for UCLA and helps with wide receivers. In this episode, we talk about coaching progressions. We talk about teaching, learning from tough seasons, and more. The audio is from a live event, so a little bit different than you're used to hearing. But I think there's some great content here from Coach Chiaverini and things you can learn as well.
We're live from AFCA on this podcast, and I'm honored to be able to have Darrin Chiaverini, receivers coach for UCLA, here to talk to us. So, Coach, thanks for taking the time here.
No problem. I appreciate you having me on, man. This is a cool setting.
Well, I know your journey in coaching really started as a player. I think a lot of our listeners probably remember you as a receiver in the NFL. You're on the coaching side now, and looking at that progression for you and moving from player to the coach. What are some of the biggest things I think that you've learned that have helped you develop here along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing that I learned when I got done playing pro football was when you get into coaching, you realize you don't know as much as you think you know. As a former player, obviously, I played pro football for the Browns, the Cowboys, and the Falcons. You feel like you have a pretty good sense of offensive football and schemes, but when you get on the coaching side, you really got to get into how you teach. And how do you reach each individual player, and how do you make them better? And so for me, like getting into coaching, I was fortunate because I got into coaching at a junior college level, and so I was teaching classes as well as coaching football, and so I had to develop a teaching progression, and so that really helped me in developing players and developing offensive systems, because you have to have a system in place where guys can learn. And so I put together my teaching progression for my classes, and that transitioned into coaching, and it's been a great bridge, and been able to have a lot of success along the ways of having a progression, teaching the position of a receiver play, but also I've been a coordinator too, so incorporating that same kind of philosophy into my offensive system. So it was been a good transition, but a lot of work. Definitely something that I have a passion for.
So in looking at that, in building a teaching progression, I think it's so important right now. I know it's really easy to learn scheme now. It used to be something that was difficult. You had to go on talk, but scheme's almost become a commodity. It's shared all over the place, right? But still, the coaching side is important. So for you, what are the keys to having a good teaching progression, regardless of what position you coach?
So for me, I basically break my teaching progression down like this, So for me, it's assignment, alignment, it's technique, execution, and finish. I've been following that progression since I first got into coaching, and so when I'm installing like an offensive system, the first thing we're gonna talk about the concept of the play. So we're going to go from the assignment, and then the base alignment for the receivers, the running backs, the tight ends, the quarterback's read progression, how he's looking at it, and then how do we execute those assignment alignment, and then what kind of technique you want to use while you're doing this, and then go out there and run the play. So I think it's vital for any coach to kind of have that system in place if they're going to be effective in coaching.
Along those lines there, right, the teaching progression, right, you have the classroom portion, you got to bring it out to the field, right? The field's a different dynamic in the classroom than being in the classroom, teaching those things on the board. So what, for you, the keys to making that successful, so that you are translating classroom to field?
You know, I think the most important thing is for any good coach is he has to know his personnel. He's really got to know, okay, what do I want to run as a coach, but what can I run with these players? And so for me, I got my start as a junior college football coach, and so I had to be able to find different ways to teach what I wanted to install, but then to get them to perform at a high level on Saturdays on the football field is that you have to do a great job of translating that stuff from the chalkboard to the practice field in your individual drills, so they pick up the concepts and then transition that into your 7-on-7 to 11-on-11 work. But to me, I think the most important thing is you have to know your personnel. You got to know what kind of players, what kind of athletes do I have, and then build your system around them. That was the best thing I've learned as a coach.
Absolutely. In looking at kind of closing this loop, right, the feedback is so important. I think it's two aspects of it. Obviously, it's evaluating the players. How well are they doing with what you're trying to teach them? But I also believe a good teacher is always going to evaluate and reflect on what they're doing, and they're part of the equation too. For you, how do you approach that side of it in the evaluation?
The funny thing about this profession, I've been in college coaching now for 16 years, and sometimes you feel like you do your best coaching when you don't have as good a football team. And I've been through that as a coach. Yeah. And when you're struggling offensively or struggling defensively or whatever system you're working in, if you're struggling, you have to do a lot of self-reflection, a lot of self-evaluation. And so I've done that over the years, on good years, but more importantly on bad years. You look at what you're doing, why you're doing it, how you're doing it, and then how can you simplify that so the players can play at a higher level? Yeah. And I think so. Any coach that's in the profession, whether it's high school, college, junior college, Division 1, 2, 3, whatever it may be, look at what you're doing as a coach reflectively and see if your players are getting it. If they're not getting it, it's on the coach to fix it. Right. And so that's one thing I've been very aware of year after year. I kind of look at myself and give myself some criticism. How can I fix this? Make this so we can be more effective on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, whatever it may be.
What you brought up there about going through the tough years, I've certainly experienced that. I know a lot of the coaches who come on the podcast and mention, that the job that you have to do in those years, and I think those are never tough because you're not where you want to be. You want to win. We're all competitors.
Yeah.
But I think it's being able to focus and embrace. What am I learning and how am I developing now? Yeah. You're going to discover. You really have to coach your butt off in those years, right?
Oh man,
you gotta do. It's easy when my guy is good. Those good players they make you a better coach. At least how you look. But truthfully, it's the difficult years. So I guess your advice in how do you embrace that, not get weighed down by the fact that the wins aren't showing up like you want.
Yeah, that the toughest thing for sure in this profession is because we're all judged by wins and losses. That's ultimately how a college football coach or a high-level high school coach or in the NFL, we're going to get judged by how many games we win. And the tough thing is sometimes you're, like I said, doing your best work when you're not as good because you're trying to find ways to score points, trying to find ways to develop your position group. So for me, I really try to find, my piece in knowing that I'm giving everything I got each and every day. I'm prepared every day as a coach. I know what my curriculum is going to be as far as when I go in the classroom with our players, what I want to get accomplished in the classroom and how that transitions to the practice field and what I'm seeing on game day. And sometimes it's small wins. It might not be show up on the scoreboard, but there's small wins. That player's getting better. He's a freshman. I can tell you a great story. I went through a tough year at Colorado a couple years ago where we didn't win as many games as we wanted to, but we had a young group of players. We were playing 5 true freshman receivers. We had a freshman quarterback. We had 2 freshman offensive linemen starting for us. We were probably one of the youngest offensive units in the Pac-12, and we took our growing pains. We took our lumps, but I saw growth. I saw growth in that group from where we started the season and where we finished the season. And even though that I moved on from Colorado after that season, I took a lot of satisfaction in knowing that those players got better. They got better from where we started the season and to where we were playing at the end of the year, winning some games, beating some good teams, and that's satisfying as a coach.
Yeah, and you have to find that satisfaction as a coach. Sure. Again, if your focus is totally on, we only won a few games this year, you can guarantee if you're not feeling good about that experience, your players aren't either. No, it's not good. Obviously, I don't recommend that anybody go out and get a bunch of losses. It's not good for your career.
I don't either.
But you can really make a lot out of that year and how you grow as a coach.
Without question.
And the experience for the players. They can leave that experience with some things to move forward with.
There's no question about it.
Well, I know for you, coach development is important. You're taking an active role in that. I know you just did a clinic here from AFCA. In looking at coach development, what are the things you recommend to young guys right now to really develop in this profession? Because I think it's changed quite a bit. Just again with the all the information out there and what everybody has available now. What do you think is a great approach?
My advice for any young coach that wants to get in the profession or is in the profession is that you have to be proactive in your learning, and you have to go out and you have to go to clinics. You have to go out and talk to people, have interactions with veteran coaches that have been in the profession, and learn. And that's one thing. My son is, he's 23 years old, and he's in the profession. He's coaching. He was at Northern Colorado last year. And I tell him, so look, son, when I was your age, man, I was going to clinics. I was talking to people. And even now, I'm 45, and I've been coaching college football for 16 years. I still reach out to guys. Hey, talk to me about this. How can we do this better? How can we do this differently so our guys can be more effective? The most important thing for young coaches is that you have to be willing to learn. No matter how many years you played pro football, no matter if you were a Division I college athlete or not, you need to be willing to learn. I was someone that played professionally for 7 years. I was a Division I college receiver. I was an all-conference receiver. Got drafted, and I still, after I got done playing, I was going to clinics about receivers, trying to learn more, trying to find a different way to teach. And if you do that, you're going to be fine. I mean, you're going to find your niche in this profession.
Yeah, we do a lot in the virtual world right now, and as I said, the information is available right here.
Yeah.
Something that came up, over the course of the season, talking with Bob Wiley on the podcast, Al Saunders, Tom McDaniels, Josh's dad.
Yeah.
And looking back at, how they grew up in the game, also how I did. You were forced into the interaction because everything wasn't available like that, and the feeling they all had is that is something that's missed a little bit, especially during the shutdown. And there certainly is new technology out there for us to interact, but I think to remember all those things, all those plays you see were designed for a certain set of people. They were called because of that certain set of people on the field. So the problem solving behind it, I think making sure that you get to that part of the information is so important, and is really what is going to make those plays successful. Not just knowing that, here's what we do against this coverage or that coverage or whatever it might be, but the education you get from the people who are out there actually doing it is very important.
No question. I think, to kind of go on top of your point is, you can give someone a playbook. It doesn't mean they're going to know how to run the playbook. So it's important for young coaches in the profession, or even guys that are trying to expand their knowledge, to have interactions, whether it's face-to-face or it's over Zoom, where you can talk about concepts, talk about your teaching progression, talk about how you're implementing your plan. I think that's vital for a coach's success. And that's one thing, even to this day. Like I said, I've been a coordinator, I've not been a coordinator, I've been a position coach. I've done all those different things, but I'm still trying to get better. How can I improve my skill set as a coach so I can help our players be better during the practice sessions and then ultimately on Saturdays?
Yeah, in having been in those positions too, I know a lot of guys today, want to jump to that title, get that title, OC, whatever, head coach. I've found this to be true. I want to get, your thoughts on it. And, when you have been in that position, especially after the first time, and then you go back to serving in a role of a position coach, let's say, I think you learn a lot about your approach as a position coach. You become a better position coach.
You do.
Because you've understood the big picture a little bit.
Yes.
A lot of guys don't get that right away. And what would be your advice, having been able to do that, step back and be a position coach? Things that when you step back, doing it this way might be a little bit better and helpful to the guy who's running it.
There's nothing like experience, right? And so you can't teach someone how to be an offensive coordinator. You can't teach someone how to be a receiver coach or a position coach in a different room. They have to go through it, and they have to have their successes and their failures. That's how you learn. You actually learn a lot more from your failures than you do your successes. And so any coach that's out there listening that wants to get better is really look at what you're teaching, how you're teaching it, and really be critical of how your players are playing. Because ultimately, as a coach, we're going to be, as a head coach, you're going to be obviously judged on wins and losses. As an offensive coordinator, you're going to be judged on how many points you score. As a defensive coordinator, you're going to be judged on how many points you don't give up. And then obviously, as a position coach, how does your room play? How do they play on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday? That's how you're going to be judged. So you got to look critically at that. as a coach and say, okay, what am I doing to help these guys be better? Or what can I do a better job of to make them be a better player? And so ultimately that's what it comes down to. It comes down to kind of being, you got to be your own worst critic, in my opinion. You got to look at yourself reflectively and say, okay, what am I doing well? What am I doing poorly that I can do a better job of to communicate better with our players?
Right. Well, Darrin, I certainly appreciate you taking time out of AFCA here to sit down with us and share some of these ideas. Certainly would love to have you back on the podcast again when we have some more time. For our coaches out there, your Twitter handle, I know you do some things there that's useful.
Any coaches that want to connect, man, I love talking ball. I love doing free clinics. All my clinics are free. I don't charge anything for them. So you can follow me on Twitter at CoachChev6. I'll connect with you. If you follow me today, I'll definitely connect with you right away, and we'll talk some football.
Coach, again, thanks for taking the time, and appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yes, sir.
Thank you again for listening to the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. Be sure to follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com and follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski.